Excellent.
Okay, Michael, you're already in. Wait, Kathy, where'd you go?
I'm getting into Clubhouse.
Hello to those who are joining us.
Exciting.
Yes, it is always.
So where should I be hearing you on both? Because I think I can, I'm not sure I'm hearing you in Clubhouse or not.
Okay, something's going on with Kathy. I'm not sure what.
I can hear you, Kathleen.
Yeah.
Yeah, my mic is
I
still
just
on my
tried to ping her into
webcam.
the room.
Cool. We're on target though, Terry.
Yeah, I know we are.
All systems go. Ground control to Major Tom. Maybe so. Is this is the karaoke phase of the? No.
She's not showing up
In Clubhouse.
Yes.
Can we ping her in here?
I did.
No, I'm in. Can you guys? I'm in Clubhouse. I can hear you in it.
There she is.
Yeah, I'm in it.
I already pinged her a couple times.
Yeah, can you guys see me? Because I'm in it.
You can't underping someone in this situation. Can you? I don't know. Yeah, no, you could no, you can't underping him.
No, you can't underping. You know, this has happened before. I'm gonna have to end and restart the room.
Cool.
Okay, there's Kathy. Now, Michael, okay, now we're there. I've had this happen before in Clubhouse where you start a room and then it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's
so,
working.
Kathy, turn on your unmute.
Okay, can you hear me now in Clubhouse?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, because I can hear you guys the whole time. I was in it. I guess I wasn't showing up on yours.
You weren't showing up, so that's why I had
weird limbos in Clubhouse. You can get caught in like the in between.
Yes, I've had that happen before. Actually, it's funny. I was doing a talk for International Women's Day, and so I went in and I was kind of waiting for them to start the room, and it was like, you know, the time for the room to start. And so I went in and said, and it asked me to start the room. And I was just like, wait a second, I'm not supposed to be starting the room. So anyway, and there's a possibility Matt won't make it because he's Mr. Busy, and you know, I'll ping him, but you know, we'll see. Actually, I'm not going to bother pinging him. If he makes it, he makes it. If not,
it's all good.
Fine. It's all good. So, okay. So Terrence, does everything look okay? Just give me the thumbs.
You sound good. We're streaming on Facebook.
Well, we can't hear her, so.
The thumbs up is coming. I have a good feeling about this.
You can't hear me. That's weird.
Thumbs down. If the thumbs up. Nailed it. Awesome. That's good. This is exciting.
Yep.
We're pre-live. This is not officially live, right?
Right.
We're live.
Oh, we are live on Facebook now. So we are live.
Excellent. And then are we live? It looks like
Terrence
we're live.
has started the room.
Exactly.
We have participants.
And we have people in Zoom and in Clubhouse and on Facebook. It's good. It's good. We're not.
That's right. We're so those for those who are wondering, we're Chris and Kim. Thanks for joining us. We are also on Clubhouse at the same time. We're doing this. This is we're kind of past the experiment stage, I would say, and more into the let's see if we can get this going stage.
Yeah.
Oh, there's Matt. Okay, Matt, I'm going to
promote that man.
All right, Matt, you are promoted. You are now a panelist.
That's what winning feels like.
So what is it that I gotta do?
Oh, and then we gotta get him audio in the audio in Clubhouse.
He's working on it.
Nice.
Now I'm just seeing 4 of us in Clubhouse, but there were other people. Are
Yeah.
there other?
People will come in and out, so
But I
don't
mean, are
worry.
you seeing other people in yours? I'm just wondering, like, because if it's showing who all is in there, because I was
No.
in there earlier and it wasn't showing me on yours. So
It's
No,
just
and-
warming up. We're just warming it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, and
Uh-huh.
actually we aren't supposed to start till 12, so don't worry about it.
okay.
I just
Yeah.
kind
There's
of.
Matt.
There's Matt.
This is what winning sounds like.
So unmute
Okay.
Matt. There you are.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Oh yeah.
So
You got there. You got there fine.
you did. So to everybody who's joining, we are so excited to be here today. We've got Matt Alex is the wonderful head of our Future X tribe in this is the higher ed side of things, but we're about education all around. So I'm going to let Mike introduce himself because he's my typical, usually for those who have been with us for This Week in Higher Ed before, this is our, we're trying out Clubhouse. We're also on Facebook Live. So we are just doing the streams. And as Mike said before, we're going to be very careful about not crossing the streams because you know what happens when you do.
That's right. Yeah,
So.
Ghostbusters reference for those of you who may not have been keeping up, but yeah, absolutely. And so Mike Palmer, I'm the host of a podcast called Trending in Education, and Terri and I have been co-hosting this since last fall, right through some of the craziness that we've all been navigating these days. And every week we try to check in, make sure everybody's doing okay, talk about what's happening in the world of higher ed and just the world around us. And we're frequently joined by guests, and I think that might be the next step here is to get to know the guests who are joining us. Terri, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah. Where do you want to start with? Kathleen, Kathleen. Yeah.
Should I go ahead?
Oh.
I was just
can
checking to
you-
make sure we can hear Matt on Zoom.
Oh, I was muted. That
Okay.
that makes the difference.
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you, Matt. So yeah, but you can probably go ahead and mute. Yeah, thanks. Good.
Okay, and can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, so I can go ahead and introduce myself.
Yes, you can.
Please.
All right. Hi, everyone. So Kathy Almy, and my background was I was a community college math professor for 20 years, and I still teach part-time, but I run my own company, Almy Education, and I work a lot with community colleges, but also universities, trying to get their developmental math, their remedial math to work, especially with all these new mandates and legislation that's around. But I do it with the focus on bringing in the faculty as part of it. And a lot of times they're a lot of these initiatives are top down and faculty aren't always a key part of it. So that's my slant. I always try to get faculty involved because you can get things to lift off and last longer if faculty are part of it.
And Terri, am I allowed to make the joke? I was
Yes, you
told
are.
there would be no math. Am I allowed to make that joke right
Yes.
now, or is that
Yes.
save that one for later?
You know, this is why I put up with you because
All right.
occasionally.
So I think,
funny.
and then Matt, can you introduce yourself as well to folks?
Hey, I'm Matt Alex, and I'm really glad to be on this stage. I focus in higher ed. I've been focused on helping universities and colleges for the past 20 years with their student technology transformations. The past 2 or 3 years, I've been really focused on future of work, future of learning, and smart campuses. So while we're rethinking how universities and colleges operate, the operating model has to be really rethought. I'm using a future of work lens as we move forward. What's the work of the future? What technologies are helping that? Who will do that work? Is it humans being complemented by machines? And where will that work be done? And the where could be that you will have a campus that's a little bit more decentralized and so forth. And then of course, the other angle is how do you prepare students for the work of the future? And that's as important of a discussion. Not only are you changing the way you work, how do you prepare students for jobs that will be changing in their lifetime over and over? And how does the education layer help them through that process? I'm Matt Alex, and I'm done talking.
That's good though. Nice job. Well done. And so like, it sounds like there's some connectivity there between what Matt was talking about and what Kathy was talking about as well, because there's some basic competencies that are going to be built into the future of work. And frequently that's built into prerequisites or co-requisites to be studying in higher ed. And so I think there are some interesting connections there. And then what should a community college student be studying is a really interesting lens to look through to talk about a lot of this, and how much might there be partnership with the employers who are on the other side of that pipeline is a really interesting angle as well. But yeah, we wanted to, so some meaty, those are the entrees. We're going to start with the appetizers. I think we wanted to warm up a little bit by just getting a sense of how everybody's doing, what's going on in their respective necks of the woods. I was mentioning a little bit, you know, I live in Brooklyn, and really for the first time, and we're obviously not jinxing this, but like, looks like numbers in New York, incidents of the virus is finally coming down, because like it was almost like we were hitting a new uncomfortable plateau. And then fortunately it looks like, you know, every day things can change, but it does look like those numbers are coming down a little bit. So that's a huge, and it's spring and the vaccine's getting out. And so like there's a little hope, at least I think, in the air around here. But that's my neck of the woods. How about you, Terry?
Well, I think, you know, California in general ended up going past New York in terms of the number of people who died, which was horrible. And that was mostly because of what was going on in Southern California. Northern California has actually been doing pretty well. And that's partly because we shut down. I think because we shut down early, we've stayed shut down, you know, all of that. So, but I heard a very interesting statistic the other day that the city of San Francisco has only had about 500 deaths. And I was just like, wow, you know, and so that's kudos to Mayor London Breed, who was one of the first to basically, even though their numbers weren't looking like New York, she shut down very quickly because she took the lesson from New York City. So so we have different colored tiers. Purple is the worst, red is next, and then orange. So here in the Bay Area, most of the counties are in orange. We're getting a lot of people vaccinated, although not nearly as quickly as we would like. And I think that's been a big frustration, in particular for our governor, that the whole vaccination side of things, like everywhere else, has been very difficult. And people are still having a hard time with that. But in terms of higher education, the news I wanted to switch to is the announcement by Mills College, which is an all-women's college in Oakland, California, that they would no longer be offering undergraduate degrees after this fall. And it brings to mind Sweetbriar that was potentially going to shut down. And but just to me, this has been coming for a long time. When I was a provost at Menlo College, Mills was just going through some horrific challenges in terms of declining enrollment and financial issues, and having to dig into their endowment, and so the writing was on the wall. And the interesting thing is Mills did some of the right things. They did a tuition reset. They were working with UC Berkeley to provide housing for Berkeley students. They were really trying hard, although I think they could have done more. I mean, there's a lot of smaller institutions right near Mills there in Oakland, and they could have done a better job, I think, of reaching out to other institutions, because those of you who follow me on LinkedIn know I've been talking a lot about developing collaborations across institutions in order to cut costs, but to allow this institution itself to survive. And it's really sad to see an all-women's, although they become gender open to people of different various genders, that it's still an interesting thing to try and maintain that kind of institution, because it is a particular space.
And where exactly? That's near you in the Bay Area?
Yes, in Oakland, California.
Oakland, got it.
So.
How long has it been? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Matt.
No, this is an interesting question. And I always say that there's going to be institutions that are in the crosshairs of the pandemic, and this is exactly it. And what I mean by that is, you know, the IBs and the R1s, they have a little bit of safety net. They'll get through this because of their reputation and their brand and their network ability.
Their endowments, yeah.
Endowments, you know, they have that. And even the R1s, you know, they have this grants and research funding. But the mid-markets and the HBCUs and schools like that are really in the crosshairs have to redefine their operating model. They have to redefine what their value is to market. I'm a big believer their value into market is to become specialized, to be convenient, and become affordable in a lot of ways. Because you're gonna, if you're going up against the reputation and the networking as well as the research one, you're going up against a whole different class of people that are in there. So first of all, schools have to stop trying to be the elite school and be the Harvards of wherever their location is and start to become their own brand. And that brand has to be then sold to the market that needs to say, hey, I need to come here. I need to come to your campus and learn that specialization or that relationship with this industry, or, you know, like there's an opportunity for provosts, chancellors, and presidents to stop and say, you know what, we have a license to change. Let's take this opportunity to redefine what we mean for the market and how do we sustain ourselves moving forward. And that's the element. And of course, because of Future of Work, I believe there's a great set of opportunities if you just stop and start putting that lens on and says, what is the work of the future? How do I put that in my campus? And how do I do it? It's unfortunate that these are the casualties, but it is something that we're going to see more of unless they stop and say, you know what, we got to redefine our own selves. I'm Matt Alex. I'm done talking.
Thanks, Matt. And I think that's a nice bridge into talking about some of the work that Kathy's doing. So we invited Kathy to join us today because I've been following her work for a while now. And, you know, one of my big concerns as a, provost in one of these small colleges was I was seeing that our students were coming in with more and more issues around I hate to use the word because everybody wants to get away from it, but remedial, basically remedial math, remedial English. So in the 3 years that I was the provost at Menlo College, our numbers of students who needed remedial classes in math and English went from about 30% to over 50%. That's in a really short time.
Developmental now, right?
Yes, thank you. Developmental math and English.
Wow.
So we had to institute some new programs, and we were kind of following the lead. I'm sure, Kathy, you're very familiar with what the Cal State system is doing around this. And so, you know, we tried to do something similar where rather than having students take a developmental class, we would put them in the regular class, but offer tutoring and, you know, extra sections, and to try to, because the problem, of course, is that students take too long to graduate. And you put them in, you know, they spend their first semester, you know, and it's a cost factor, especially at a small private, you know. The last thing you want to do is have students taking classes that don't count towards their degree. You know, it's bad enough at the Cal State, which at least is affordable. But, you know, in the private schools, we can't afford to have that. So we're trying to, anyway, Kathy, take it away, because you're doing this work.
Okay, so I'm curious, what made it go from 30% to 50%? Because holy cow, that's an increase in a short period of time. And then when you guys tried to institute some of the things like what Cal State was doing, did it help?
Well, I don't know, because I didn't stick around
long
enough to see. But my suspicion is that, you know, it was iffy in terms of, you know, was it really helping the students get to that next level of math and so on? And so I would say that, you know, it probably was good for some students because I think the problem is a lot of students were coming in and they'd just forgotten their math because, you know, they took the bare minimum, and this is what the problem is, right? They take the bare minimum in high school. They may not even take math their senior year. So, you know, we're basically admitting some, you know, at Menlo College, we're admitting students who are similar to the profile of a Cal State student who is coming in, you know, and maybe hadn't taken math for a year. And, you know, even my own son, you know, didn't take math his senior year of college, and so he had to so he took a sort of developmental class, although he's staying on track with everything else. But no, I think the reason those numbers increased is because we were really being aggressive about admitting students, and I wasn't involved in that directly, but I know that this is true of most institutions these days, is that they're having to be really trying to get more students because the numbers are declining, et cetera. And that's the problem for the tuition dependent institution, is that sometimes you end up taking students who may not be as prepared as others. I was just gonna say,
go
ahead.
Well, I was just saying that you could see that as a problem too, though, right? Because ultimately if you're talking about the future of work, these are people who are going to need to be filling skills gaps in the future. How do we make sure they're getting the training and development that they need? Not to mention they're going to need to be members of their community. So like, how are they getting that education? And even if, the requirements for developmental math, it's actually, in some ways the intersection between what Kathy's representing and what Matt's representing, is where maybe we could try to focus a bit more of the conversation, as well as what kind of jobs and futures are out there for students who might be taking a developmental math program, and then what kind of pipelines and programs can we develop with them and with the educators in their communities and in these struggling schools. Do you have any perspective on that, Kathy, like the connection between math education and the future of work?
Yeah, just a smidge. That's honestly, that's why I'm passionate about what I do. Because for so long I was just in the classroom, and not saying that that's easy. I still teach, and I know being a faculty member is tough, but the problem is that you don't always see all of the outward issues that our students are facing. And it's easy to become, I hate to say this, but kind of myopic and just see what's in front of you. And what we realized is, and I'm very much just like, I just like to say what the reality of it is. Math is kind of like a clog in a drain. I've said that. It's not a pretty visual, but it is true. And it's not like anybody's trying to be that way. It just is that way. And some of it is just outdated structures that there's so much that needs to be modernized. It's not even funny. There was such a good article that came out. I don't know if it came out today or if it was just sometime this week, but it was in the Chronicle, and it's from the president of Harvard Graduate School of Education, about really looking at, this is the time to modernize. Like, this is the time the higher ed really needs to take a look at what we're doing, because this is the opportunity to do it. And just by nature of our things, we don't change very much. And so we have all these structures in place that don't really work, and students get caught in developmental math, and then they can't get out of it. And so we have fewer people that are graduating and end up going into work. And so we've got all of these baby boomers who are retiring, will be retiring, and we don't have the people to replace into those positions because we don't have enough people that are graduating. So it's, so Matt, when I heard what you were doing, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, we're very aligned. Because I know that it's not like math is the answer to everything, but it seems like it's a problem for many. And a lot of times in schools, if they can get their math programs working, it really is like the pipelines just open and we have more students flowing through. The problem is, how do you do that? There's a lot of debate about doing that. Faculty aren't always on board because they don't feel like they're included in it. And so they can put up, resistance. And I understand why, but it's making that change is a challenge. So, that's what my work is helping these schools make that change in a way that everybody can live with. I'm trying to get win-win solutions so that we don't have these turf wars and these power wars, because that's what a lot of this comes down to. Who's in charge? Who gets to say what's going on in my class? Who gets to say what I'm teaching? And we've all had so much freedom forever that it's very hard at the higher ed level to all of a sudden now have some outward group saying, you're going to teach this content in this way. K-12 has had that for a long time. Higher ed has not. So it's new. And would you prefer, I noticed, I was listening to a Clubhouse room yesterday and Matt's doing something, should I say, and I'm done speaking. Does that help?
Yes. Yeah. And we're just, I was going over that earlier today. So it's just so we can say we're done speaking, just so the folks who don't have the visual cues can know who's
Right.
speaking. And actually you have to say your name too. So that I'm Terri and I'm done speaking.
I'm Kathy and I'm done speaking. All right.
And this is Mike. I'm soon to be done speaking. I think maybe get a little bit of Matt's perspective on that. How do you think about math as it relates to the future of work? This is Mike, no longer talking.
No, this is really interesting. Math is just one of the many factors that we're going to have to think about, right? I think partly we're going to have to make the student body well-rounded. There's things in math that gets you to be analytical and gets you to synthesize information. It gets you to apply things to certain situations. So while we think about math as 1+1 or cosines or something like that, really there is a lot of logic that your brain needs to go through to learn how to decipher the world that you work in. Now, the work of the future will require, some work will require math, some will require analytics of that element, needs to be able to figure out percentages very fast. So that is an important element. It goes back to the same discussion where everyone says, well, we don't need the liberal arts. The reality is you need the liberal arts because you still need the holistic person in that workplace and that workforce. So including math, including the liberal arts. And that's why everyone thinks that, oh, we're going to have Google do certificates and we're not going to need universities. That's not true. And that won't be the case. Now, could universities and colleges become more effective? Yes, right? We want them to become more effective. But I think some of it is rethinking what college should look like or K through 12 should look like, and the operating model should work very effectively. And I know that Todd's down in the stage, and we'll bring Todd up at some point to talk about more of the details between the future of work and industry. I'm a big believer that there is this what I call the educational value chain, and it's the 3 I's. It's industry, it's institution, and it's individual. You need to figure out what the industry needs. You need to understand what the direction of it is, what's their future look like. You need to look at that future and then design the institution to allow for you to meet the needs of that institution. And then you have the individual that will intersect with industry as well as the institution to prepare them for that work of that future. So that's how I look at that in terms of future work. And in all 3 of those cases, liberal arts is going to be needed. You're going to need math to be a part of it. I think the problem that we have is the math that is taught today is the same math that's been taught for years. We haven't rethought how do we teach math in a much different way. And that's the kind of discussions we do. And I know faculty may not want to hear it because they're like, well, we learned it. This is how we learned it. The reality of it is the way we communicate isn't from my old telephone. It's on an iPhone. Like, we have to rethink what we do. And I'm Matt Alex, and I'm done talking.
Oh my gosh, that's good.
Yeah.
Well, the quantitative literacy is the interesting, like how do quantitative competencies, I think, are very different than what K-12 or even the structure of math is not really mapping to the way we use quantitative skills. Now, data science, look at data science as a term that has really exploded into the workforce, and whether you are officially grabbing that title as saying, I am a data scientist, or if you're just someone who wants to stay skilled and competent and relevant, you need to at least have some data literacy. And a lot of that data literacy is built on some quantitative foundations. But I think reimagining that's where, Matt, I'm not sure I'm 100% with you on like how much the institutions are ready to adopt the level of transformation that is probably going to be required. And that's where I think in a lot of ways the private sector is going to start to, one of the words I love is disintermediate, because it's got a lot of syllables, but try to disintermediate the institution from that talent pipeline. And that's why it does, it reminds me very much of Clayton Christensen, the innovator's dilemma. It's something I had anticipated. I was wrong. I thought it was going to come much sooner with the advent of the MOOCs back in 2012, the massive open online courses. but that disruption didn't really happen then. And then I think you needed this sort of cataclysmic event of the pandemic to, liquefy what was rigid. And now we're in this moment in time where there's a tremendous like immediacy to taking some action to affect some change now. And that's where I'm concerned that the slowness of the institutions and the bureaucracy of higher education is not going to be ready to meet the challenge. That's Mike Palmer, and I'm done talking.
And I want to come back to Kathy. Just want to note, for those who are on our Zoom or Facebook, we've got a comment from Kevin talking about from Chris talking about Kevin Russo's recent book. But Kathy, you have a textbook out there. How is it different?
Yeah, but it's so funny that you just mentioned that Kevin, this book, Future Proof. I literally bought that this week. And it's so good. And so I just think there's not going to be enough time to read before I die. That's what I've determined. There's always going to be too many books and not enough time. Yeah, God, Matt, so many things you said. I'm just like, I don't know if I can clap, if that'll mess up the audio, but I want to clap. I want to talk.
It's the Zoom clap.
The Zoom clap, like a seal. But you're so spot on with so many things. It's like the thing that frustrates me to no end is I look at what we're teaching in a classroom, and it's like, knowing that Google exists and the different programs exist, and so much of it is out of date. And then we have students who can't make sense of things that in their job, like basic data analysis. Because like in my business, we're always looking at data all the time, and we're looking at trends. And I will have people that are like, and I respect it, and they'll just tell me, they're like, Kathy, I'm not a data person. I'm not comfortable with that. But it's like, but everybody needs to have some comfort with data. That is the world we live in. So, and Terri mentioned this, I do have a book, because here's my thing that I think is so interesting. I know the mind of most faculty, and not all of them, but most of them. And it's like, trying to get them to change. I understand the things that are going to come up, they're going to stop them. And so I was involved with like a modernization of developmental math project year. I almost said project. It's like I was in Toronto, but from years ago. And when we started working on that project in 2009, we wanted to update not only the content, but the instructional design. How are we teaching this class, and what are we teaching? And that is awesome, but faculty are busy, and they do not have time to invent a curriculum and test it and make sure it works. And they're not going to try something that's untested. So that's how I ended up writing a book. I never intended to, but and now we're in our 3rd edition. Math Lit, for anybody that's curious, out of Pearson. But what I love is basically my philosophy is embodied in that. And then I've just done more work since then. And this whole idea of trying to teach students about making math relevant, how do we actually use it, and making decisions. I was just listening to a podcast this week, and they were talking about, of course, AI is everywhere. And it's like, and so AI is really good at predictive ability, but it's not great at judgment. And that's the human element. And it's like, that's what we need to be focusing on with our students. And, let's work with the technology instead of against it. Mm-hmm. And that's Kathy Almy, and I stop talking.
Well, and I think to me, the skills that this speaks to is data interpretation and actually good critical reasoning. But I'd be curious, Matt, as someone who's thinking about the future of work and the disruption on the horizon, what skills and competencies, skills-based education is a huge trend, and I imagine it's going to be critical to identifying the gaps that need to get filled in terms of skills and competencies of the students that we're educating. Do you have a perspective on any of you mentioned liberal arts education? That's where, to me, a lot of like the critical thinking and creativity, which is harder to measure, but being creative is something that AI is unlikely going to outstrip us on. But I'd be curious, Matt, and I'll go quiet after I ask this question, just what your perspective is on the types of, first off, skills-based, competency-based understanding of educational problems, and then assuming you adopt that or you see there's some value in that, what do you think about what skills do you see emerging, and how do you see higher ed playing a role in responding to the emerging skills needs?
Yeah, and I'll be honest, there's probably not a right answer or wrong answer on what the skills is going to be. I think the skill that I always tell, and like my daughter is about to go to college, she's about to embark on her college journey. And I've told her, like, your major will not default you. Like, you will go to college, pick a major that'll make you wake up every morning and feel challenged and interested and curious, and with people that are like-minded in that same major, that gets you to really rethink, right? So the skill of being able to navigate that discussion, that curiosity, is going to be it's not in any major. We don't say, oh, we're going to teach you curiosity today, or we're not going to teach you, this. It's so easy right now for us to say what the job of the future is going to be AI, or the job of the future is ML, or the job of the future is a data scientist, or like, those are just roles in what we will play in society. I think when we think about the jobs of the future, we have to start thinking about, how does the human element of it allow for you to play a better role? And so I look at jobs in two structure. It's in two ways. One is a structured job, and then an unstructured job. A structured job is just details. It's the mundane activities that everyone does. It's data entry. It's repeating the same stuff over and over. It's very systematic and rule based, right? And that's a job. And then the other one is the unstructured job, or this collaborative job, where you now need critical thinking, you need critical reasoning, you need this interaction. The reality of it is the structured job should be done by machines. It should be done by automation, so that you get the capacity of humans to do really unstructured collaborative work. And I would say that's the job skill that you want. Is there a place for AI? Sure. We're going to need people who know AI and data tree structures, and we need those type of people. But there is also a set of people that need to understand what AI can do to help improve the world that we live in, the industries that we're in. So when I think about smart, I design smart campuses, and the way that I lay that out is, I didn't make up AI doing something. I went to other industries. I went to smart retail and smart banking and smart venues and smart cities. And I looked at the use cases that served their customers, their consumers, and the products that they built. And if you take that back into my world of higher ed, a student is a consumer, they're a customer, and they're a product. So I want to use the same use cases. This whole thing about attendance at a university is never done. But yet Starbucks knows exactly when I walk in the door. It knows exactly what I want. We don't even start to use what's available to us in our world. And it's because everyone's afraid of it. I've had so many people say, oh, we have all this security and FERPA, and you name all the roadblocks they're going to throw on you. And then I asked the same question, like, so why do you give your information for gamification of your coffee cup?
Right.
And they can't, you're giving them. The reality of it is they're not educated enough to understand that we can mask PII data to a great extent, that we don't need to know that it's Michael or Kathleen. We just know that there is someone like Kathleen and Michael in this store that needs this information. That's the power of understanding what AI and machine learning can do for you, or the next generation technology. So I think there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of unknown, and I would say higher ed's purpose is to educate that and then drive those discussions that way. I'm Matt Alex, and I'm done talking.
Yeah, it'd be great to dig back into some of that. I'm curious about the smart campus designs and what kind of variation you do there. It would be an interesting topic to come back into. Also, just as a reminder, we are recording this session as part of This Week in Higher Ed. It'll be coming out as a podcast a little bit down the road. And we're doing this in Clubhouse at the same time. So folks who are interested in joining us on the stage in Clubhouse, we're going to be opening that up. Just as a reminder, I'm going to do my best to try to segue stuff live so that when we edit for the podcast, it sounds somewhat coherent, but we're not going to be picking up people's audio out of the Clubhouse. So there'll be some editing done through the magic of editing, and everything's going to turn out okay. So I think we were going to, I don't know if Todd may have Oh, Todd's
Yeah,
there.
Todd's
Cool.
here.
Yeah, so folks, if you do want to join us in Clubhouse, we could continue with that conversation, kind of picking up on some of the topics just around the skills that are interesting nowadays. Terri, how about from your perspective, just skills? We talked about quantitative foundations. I think Matt had some good points about skills for the future of work and how he's thinking about that, how the human element that will not be automated, the difference between a complicated versus a complex problem, leave the complex problems to humans, and the complicated ones can be solved by AI and by programming and developers. Those developers are going to need the quantitative skills that we're talking about. It is a good, meaningful pathway. It's just probably inside of 10% of the population is going to be hands-on publishing code, most likely. So the rest of us are going to need to be data competent, data relevant, quantitatively savvy, critical thinkers, creative, collaborative, all those interesting things. Terri, you've been thinking a lot about diversity and being able to work collaboratively with people who may not look like you, may not come from a background that's similar to yours. There's a lot of new skills emerging. And then that's just being a human or a learner, as to be an administrator, to be a leader, to be someone who's running an organization. How are you thinking about skills and competencies and the role that higher ed can play versus what maybe is going to happen outside of higher ed?
Well, I'm a big proponent for.
That's Mike. I'm done talking. Yeah.
Oh, can you guys hear me? Okay.
Terri?
Yes. Hello. Oh,
I see.
sorry. Sorry. I did. And the other problem I'm having is my AirPods. My ears are too small. So, but anyway, okay. So that I was just going to say, there's a really interesting issue between, kind of the work that Kathy does with, math and getting that set up right with faculty in higher ed, and then what's happening in K through 12, especially high school, right? Mm-hmm. So, there's even talk now about getting, data science to be taught in high school. And, my son, who's going to be a senior next year, is going to take statistics. And we didn't even have that option when I was in high school. And I think that's going to be, why can't we get more practical math? I've heard so many people here in Clubhouse and on NPR and on podcasts talking about how we need to teach. I heard a really great podcast the other day by a Stanford neuroscientist, and I'm not going to remember her name, but we have to, everybody's capable of learning math. And that's, and Kathy, I think that's what you were referring to earlier is, we see math as the clog in the drain, but everybody's capable of learning math. We just have to be willing to teach it in a way that people can actually learn it. And we have to get away from this idea that some people are smarter than others, and so they're going to be better at math. That's not the reality. The science says that anybody can learn math, basically, and that's the mindset the teachers and the faculty in higher ed have to go into it with, is this idea that everybody can learn math, and therefore we also need to be teaching things like data. I don't call it data science, just call it understanding our world, right? Our world is data. We got to get away from, because when you use terminology, data and data science, people think this is highfalutin thing. No, it's just understanding, taking using a rain gauge and tracking, how much rain you're getting, and then extrapolating that, that's data, that's science, that's, trying to figure things out. So teaching kids math from a practical perspective, and we know that works a lot better than making them sit there and memorize things, this whole memorization thing. But I don't want to talk too long. Kathy, I'm going to you jump in, and then we're going to go to our audience. So I'm done.
Yes, because I definitely want to hear the people who've come up to this stage. I love Clubhouse is new to me, but I think it's cool. I think part of it, what you were talking about, is there are things that we know that work, but they have been slow to come to higher ed. So I'm unfortunate in some ways, because my background, I originally started teaching high school. My undergraduate degree was in math ed, but then I did my graduate degree in pure math. So I've got both aspects of that. But when you're in the K-12 aspect, it's very much about learning. And I've always, the big thing that and I know that, some academics will, take challenge with what I'm saying is, but I really feel like the more work that I've done, where I'm working with K-12 and I'm working with higher ed, it seems like K-12 is about learning. They're really focused on that. And in higher ed, we're really focused on teaching. We're really focused on, but what we mean by that is our content and instruction and usually lecture, and that just, disseminating lots of information, not really the next step, which is okay. So it's like, I can say, oh, I had a great stats class. I got up and I taught all about confidence intervals and it rocked. But what did my students get from it? Like, my whole thing is like, when we were having like the election in the fall, could we have an educated discussion about the issues with polling and the errors? And if we can't, what have we done? I mean, like, what's the point of the class? And so that's the thing I'm constantly, trying to push, faculty lovingly. I mean, I care about them, they're my people, but trying to get them to think about that, just because we've always done it this way and just because we all learned it this way, but that's not the world we live in anymore. Our students are going to be in a different world. We don't even know the jobs they're going to have to be ready for. But like some of the things that you guys have been saying, like what Matt was saying, if we can teach them about things like creativity and problem solving and critical thinking, and not the way we've been doing it, there's other ways to do it, then we arm them with skills that will transfer to various different fields, which is what they need to be able to do. So, I mean, I do think it's interesting. There's a lot from K-12 that we can learn, and there are some things that are coming to higher ed, but they have been slow to come. Things like teaching with contextualized learning, teaching through problem solving, especially in STEM, which is hilarious because if you talk, I'm married to an engineer. Terry, I guess I didn't realize you were too. Engineers in the wild, in the real world, all work together, but we teach STEM as though we're all in these, everything is, we don't ever get to talk to each other. And that's not how STEM works in real life at all. So yeah. I could go all day, but I'm going to stop talking and let someone from the stage come up.
I just have to make one last comment, which is that, it's so funny now. My husband in the past never would work with software. Now the software and hardware engineers have come together and are like actually working together. But anyway, let's get to the audience.
Yeah.
So Todd, I think, was someone who I know, Matt, I think Todd, and Todd, if you wanted to weigh in, also, I think because Tarrant is up here, but I don't think she's going to be. And also, if you're interested, raise a hand. We'll bring other folks up there. But Todd, I don't know if you wanted to join now. Also, we could keep going amongst ourselves, but happy to have you join now.
Yeah.
Leadership perspective, empathy is going to matter more than ever, and not just empathy as we think about it, but to quote from a book I'm reading, moving beyond an understanding of others' lives and pain to understanding the origins of our biases. I don't know if that sounds familiar, Terry. The thought that it's going to be easy for anybody to change and to leverage Matt's, capital I to the third here. Difficulty changing at this pace. The institutions are not used to change, but they're not the only ones. Individuals are a reason for that because of the legacy that my alma mater represents in my family. My son literally went to the same.
For those of you who are still in the Zoom room, thanks for bearing with us. We have two things happening at the same time.
And so this thought about how things are going to change impact at every level. Industry, when are they really, Google search aside, there's some industry recognized certificates that seem to matter immediately because Google's ready to hire people. But when will industry at scale be ready to hire people that don't have a 4-year degree? They're already doing it with a but in terms of what their target is. When will the institutions change? How quickly will individuals evolve? And I, full credit, Michael, around the acceleration that occurred in 2020. Maybe we accelerated by a decade, but I'm thinking this may have been a multi-generational change without it. And so I think it will be interesting to see. And I do think we're going to see a fair amount of, you referenced Clay Christensen before. Yep. We're going to see a fair amount of creative destruction.
Yep.
As a part of this innovator's dilemma. I mean, some of these, 4,900 schools are going to go away. Mm-hmm. I think we have to ask ourselves, why is that wrong? Isn't that normal when change like this occurs? So just some initial thoughts.
Some great stuff. And just real quick, there are folks in our Zoom room, and we thank you for sticking it out with us. I was able to play the Clubhouse for them briefly, but I think this is more moving into Clubhouse a bit. But just to follow up on Todd's points there, which I thought were great. I think there's lots of questions out there around how far ahead we have accelerated through this transformation, and then how much we're going to snap back to patterns of behavior that were very natural to us pre-pandemic, where we have ourselves as human beings who need to socialize in ways that we've socialized over the years, and then we also are used to coming together, particularly when we're in those transitional ages that higher ed typically addresses. So I would be curious how folks are thinking about the population around Gen Z who is being educated, and in many ways they are the protagonists in this story of higher education. If there is creative destruction is an interesting expression. Reminds me, I think Bakunin said the urge to destroy is also a creative one. So that is it is an interesting point to be made. But how do we minimize the casualties, and how do we think about who's most at risk? Because I think, going back to Matt's point at the top, the crosshairs are on many of the universities that are serving people who otherwise aren't going to get the level of care and attention that they're getting. So I don't know if we have other people joining, but I just wanted to stay fluid.
Let me just do a quick response to that, and then we can jump to our next person is Ella. But I just want to say, that's a critical point, Mike, because if we don't make sure that we are including those people coming from, the underrepresented, low income, those are those people who really need that education. And if we aren't paying attention to that, then we're going to lose out on a huge, layer of people who aren't getting the education they need. So anyway, I just want to add that point, but I'm done. And Ella, do you want to join us?
Yes, Ella, and I'm having a session at 7 tonight. I'd love to, 7 Central, would love to have you. It's all about, awesome. I'll make you a moderator. Thank you.
That was a great question. There's a company, I did talk to Brian Tobal, who I've seen in here a bit. There's a company called Schoolhouse. There's a lot of them like this. Schoolhouse is one of them, where they're setting up more like micro schools. So they do the back office part of the learning pod for small groups. So there are some new startups emerging, I think, I think they might have even been around um, pre-pandemic. I think they may have started right around when the pandemic happened, but you know, and the idea there is they work with a lead parent, and you can they match you with a tutor. They handle all the other kind of accreditation stuff, and then you know, so I think stuff like that is going to emerge as a disruptor to K-12 education. I think it's going to be a question of who can afford it, and how can it be made accessible? Can the benefits of like online tutoring become more widely accessible coming out of the pandemic? I'm kind of hopeful about that as someone who's done a lot of online tutoring and online, like live online teaching over the years. Like, I think it's a really engaging platform, sometimes more focused than face-to-face, frankly, because you can just focus on the instruction. And then you can start blending in the intentional time that you spend physically present with other people, which I think we're all going to rejoice in and definitely value. But I would be looking. Schoolhouse is one company that jumps to mind, but like the micro school, micro pod movement is the thing that's happening in K-12. And there's also a lot more venture activity in K-12 around tutoring nowadays too. Like, how do you create business ventures that will create a scalable, accessible solution to tutoring? It's hard to scale, you know, because like you have to pay, assuming you're paying the human who is doing the live teaching. If it's one-on-one, it gets really expensive. But hopefully that answered your question. Do we have other? Looks like Erica, or yeah, Erica. Hi.
Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm happy to jump in a little bit on this because I've been trying to follow these trends really pretty closely. And, you know, and having a son in high school, I'm also interested on a personal level, but also kind of in higher ed. And I actually, there was just a survey that came out for higher ed, and that students, the majority of students want to go back to face-to-face, but they also are satisfied with Zoom, you know, about 50 to 60%. There was only 9% who said they don't want to go back to the classroom ever. And so, you know, it's interesting, but you know, I think higher ed is different than K through 12 on this front, because the bigger issue, I think, for K through 12 is the strain it's putting on parents and moms in particular. So, you know, there's one side is this, are students able to learn and how are they adapting? And the other side is how it's impacting, you know, people who are stuck at home and have to deal with this on a day-to-day basis. So Kathy, did you have anything you want to add from your perspective?
Did it again, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, just it's interesting seeing the differences and how, you know, the remote learning has played out with K-12 versus higher ed. I also have, it's funny, I have a junior in college, my daughter, and I have a junior in high school, my son, and just watching it, and then just the differences between high schools. I work with a lot of different high schools in Illinois, and there's such a wide variety of how this was implemented this year. I don't know, it's going to be really interesting to see how how when we come back together, what does it look like? Like what's fall going to look like? In my mind, I'm imagining we're not going to have masks on. It's going to look more normal, but I hear some people say we'll still have masks. And I'm just like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well, the
think
new-
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, the new
Yeah.
norms are to be determined. But you know, if you take the example of, you know, folks who've been through SARS many years ago, you would see them. You know, I live in New York. You'd see them on the subway for years. You know, really since
You're
whenever
right.
SARS happened, they'd always be wearing a mask in the subway. And I remember it was another awakening in my own consciousness where I was like, oh, I totally identify with those people who I was making fun of before, where I was like, why is that guy wearing a mask? You know, come on. Now I don't see myself stopping that. If I do take a subway, also, you know, I imagine, you know, the accelerant idea, people are going to be cycling or handling their mobility in their own ways. You know, it does seem like a real boon for doing things outside and breaking out of the 30-to-1 student faculty ratio that is sort of the foundation of a lot of our constructs. So I do think there is a new opportunity for being a little more creative and experimental. Maybe this ties back to Matt's smart campuses too, which I did want to. I'm going to have to hop in a few minutes too. This is awesome, and thanks to the folks who are sticking around in the Zoom room or on Facebook. This is a bit of an ad for the Clubhouse because I think the Clubhouse is the most coherent of our experiences. So thank you for those of you who are in Clubhouse now. But Matt, you know, I feel like you know, I'll hang up, let you answer. It's kind of like drive time radio. But if you could give a little more perspective on what the smart campus is, I think that's pretty interesting. The language is interesting, and I think as we redesign coming out of this to come into some kind of new normal, I'd be curious how you're thinking about it and what some of the innovation might be in that space. That's Mike. I'm done talking.
Yeah. Well, in the 5 minutes, I don't think I can address everything on Smart Campus, but you know, Smart Campus is nothing more than what we experience today in everywhere else, right? You go to check in for an airline, there's a smart airline. If you your mobile device for your fitness areas is as a place. You can just look at smart technologies everywhere, and what smart campuses are going to need to do. And in order to really become a smart campus, you got to become frictionless. Just like our experience with Amazon, just our experience with changing seats on an airplane, it's frictionless in the way we do it, right? So campuses have to look at their use cases and become frictionless. That's the first element. So like the problem that we have is there's multiple levels to move to a very smart campus. The first is just let's make things that we do mundane, and friction. Let's remove that from the thing and let's use technologies that enable it, which are much more cost effective than some of the larger investment in technologies that we're putting in right now. Let's look at the things that can be easily done. So that's our first angle. The other element is smart campus is going to be personalized. It's going to allow for you to identify people in a different way, provide them information a certain way, educate them a certain way. That's going to be a part of a smart campus in terms of what it does. The third element is access. We're going to be able to allow people to have access to a campus much more effectively. You know, everyone wants to go to an Ivy League school. The reality of it is Harvard could open up everything in terms of their content to educate many more people than they do because of the ability for us to do remote education and things like that. That's third one. The fourth one is we got to change the operating model. We got to move to more of a lifelong learning model. We're in this earn it model. The reason that we are a costly ecosystem, just think about an office or a set of offices in a K-12 or even in higher ed. How many offices are managing the earning elements of a campus? Grades, putting them into a course, all these things are, you know, getting them into a degree. How many advisors and making sure you have 120 hours of credit? Like there's a lot of earn it. We got to move to this learn it model. And this is when you'll start to drive it. And then the other one is just time frame. We're constrained by time at a university. We have an asynchronous model for things that we want, but we have a lot of synchronous element that requires you in a face-to-face. And the question is, do I need to do that? So there's a little bit of operating model go there. Now, to go back to the question that was just posed about tutoring and others, right? My son was doing in-person tutoring. As soon as the pandemic happened, Zoom kicked in. You know what? Didn't miss a beat, because what the activities were the same thing. It was on his time. The difference was he was given leeway to go do it and then come back in a much different way. So I think that's the element of how we will have to think about smart campuses. I will do a whole session on smart campus, because smart campus is the user experience, the classroom experience, the venues in a campus experience, the fleets within a campus that can be automated. Like, there's a lot more than just one element. It's everything we're doing in smart venues, smart retail, smart stadiums that will be brought into a campus. I'm Matt Alex, and I'm done talking.
I'm ready for the VR headset for you to take us on a journey. Anyway, I gotta go. Thanks, Terry. This is great.
Yes,
And I know you're
I'm
still
sticking around
carrying
for
on.
those who are still on Clubhouse and on our Zoom.
You
And
might be on
Kathy's.
mute.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead. Sure.
Yeah, go ahead,
please.
Todd.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. And so, Keel, I see you down there. If you want to join us for, we're going to keep going for about another 5-10 minutes for those who are still here. Oh, she doesn't know. She's okay. She's our a tech person.
Increasingly saying, you don't need that degree and we'll hire you. I just don't see colleges really braced for what is about to happen to them. And if what happens, Terry, you made a good point about starting this sort of job training in high school, which I agree 100% with. The idea of turning over K-12 to this preparatory warm-up act is completely idiotic. So if that starts to happen, you're getting a lot more job training in high school. Employers are saying, you don't need that degree. You know, you can innovate from here to eternity, but it's going to be hard to get students to go to your college if they're not required to go 4 years. And then the other point I want to make is I'm hearing a lot too much talk about what colleges need to do is way too vague and generic. I'm hearing words like creativity, critical thinking, collaboration, which are all as good as far as those go. But I think colleges need to work with employers on very specific skill sets and job skills. And the other thing I see is way too much group learning and classroom learning. I had a discussion with Robert Gibson on LinkedIn this morning about that. You know, I don't think people are familiar with the history. The classroom was never intended to be the centerpiece of education. It was intended to be the sideshow and not the main show. And now it's getting treated as the main show. And I hear discussions of education that do not include the word book, library, lab, art studio, blah, blah, blah. So anyway.
All right. Thanks, Keel. Yeah, so I think on that note, yeah,
Keel,
there's
you're
so
like a
much-
wet blanket, Keel. You're like a wet blanket. Yeah. Yeah. So let me just address Keel's point, and Keel makes good points. So we should recognize his points. But I don't think we throw everything out in higher ed and we move. I think there, yeah. I know, but what I'm getting at is I think there is another tentacle that will get created that has nimble, has the ability to be more affordable, more specialized, and the ones that want to go through that 4-year cruise and they're willing to pay for it. I think that will be played out in the market in supply and demand in terms of which model is better for the corporations to take on. And I'm not saying one is better than the other. I think it needs to just play out. And I do believe that corporations and hiring managers need to take a heavy look at how they hire. Does a 4-year degree that they think is needed for some of the jobs really require a 4-year degree? And I think if you start to address that, then schools will have to change. Higher ed will only change if external factors push them to change. Pandemic has moved them to this world. I think if hiring managers will change in the way they hire, it will then make them change their curriculum too. So, and me and all transparent, me and Keel will talk about this stuff when we go at it all the time. So it's okay.
And I'm a big believer in higher ed. I just think there needs to be more voices of reality and preparation, and just saying, look, so much of the demand for higher ed is structured. It's like Todd said, it's so structured around this 4-year degree. And if employers are saying you don't need that degree, that the ramifications of that for higher ed, I see polls like inside higher ed where they're expressing confidence that they'll be fully robust in 10 years. And like Robert Gibson and I were saying, wow, that's just not really realistic.
And what I said, Teal, is like they've got their heads in the sand. so
yeah.
You
just have to, I just think there needs to be sort of a government-led sort of contingency planning and preparation and things like that.
Yeah.
And there'll still be people that want to do that 4-year thing, but it'll be a dwindling number because so many of the people are there to just get that their ticket punched for jobs.
Right. And this is Terry again. And I just think that we're going to see just a lot more differentiation. I'm a big fan of micro-credentials, of 2-year degrees that are, if you're at a 4-year institution and you finish, 2 years, you should leave with something, not nothing that can be transferred if you decide later in life to get a 4-year degree. All of that has to change. Yes, absolutely. And so we do need to wrap up because we have other things to do. And I want to give Kathy the last word.
This is awesome. And how often do you do this on Clubhouse? Is this at least once a week or is it more than once a week?
That's what we're figuring out.
Because I'm going to be listening again because I love, it's fun talking to people that, I get that this is hard work, but I also know this, change can happen. Sometimes it does take external forces, but if we take advantage of the situation that we're in, never let a good crisis go to waste. It's a horrible expression, but seriously, if we take advantage of this, we could actually make some meaningful changes in higher ed. If we it's like things are moving. Let's not just be like, hey, let's just go back to where we were. Let's actually keep it moving.
Right.
And it takes a lot of people to do that, but I know I've seen it, and I'm sure you guys have too. It's absolutely possible to make happen.
Right. And I see a lot of, go ahead, Matt.
So Kathleen, if you ever want to have a discussion about this, we're always on Clubhouse on some random
Matt
room.
sure is.
Yeah. So
just follow Matt.
We can have tons between me and Todd. You'll find a discussion, and we're in more than just higher ed. We're in like ed tech, and we're in marketing campaigns from other places. So
awesome.
There's a lot of just intersection. The greatest thing about the Clubhouse element is there's so many different diverse ideas. I've been in higher ed for 30 years, and if I went to a campus now and I sat around the boardroom, I'm hearing a 1990s to 2020 discussion still.
Yes.
They haven't stepped out and recognized that they have to change. And you know what? And some of those are the schools that are in the crosshairs, and they're going to struggle, and there's going to be some misfortunes of closures because of that. And I think we'll adjust to that, but I think there's going to be different models and schools have to think about those models. So
Yep.
I'm at Alex. I'm done talking.
All right, so I'm going to wrap us up here, folks. If you're new, I see there's some party hats in the audience. Make sure you click on the little green house at the top and join the Future X Tribe. I'm going to be doing a discussion tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern on diversity in education. And then we also have, I have my Radical Empathy Club for those, I know Todd isn't to empathy, but that's based on my book, Radical Empathy, Finding a Path to Bridging Racial Divides. So if you're interested in diversity issues, make sure you follow me. Kathy is also there. Make sure you're following her and Matt and all of us. So we are really very grateful to those of you who've joined us today. And I'm going to give a little clap for
I
this
just want to plug in. I'm doing a session today, 8
Oh, that's
p.m.
right.
Eastern, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. What's wrong with admissions, the false spin of elite colleges?
Yes.
It's pretty interesting. So
Yeah.
I hope you guys will come to, oh yeah, it's building already. There's a lot of people already starting to say, I'll be in that. And a lot of it stems from people watching the Operational Varsity Blues and then so we'll touch on it a little bit, but it isn't to ding higher ed. It's to start to think about what does admissions look like in the future. And so we got to understand what's wrong with it today. So
yeah,
I hope you guys will join us.
Yeah, I'll be in that discussion too. So thanks,
Awesome.
everybody. I'm going to go ahead
you.
and end our room now, and we'll see you in the future on Clubhouse. But make sure if you're in Clubhouse, follow me at follow our website. We're at brighterhighered.com. We have our community for folks in higher ed, which is community. Gosh, I can't talk. And our community.brighterhighered.com, and we will catch up with everybody later. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks.
Okay, Clubhouse has ended. I'm going to take these out and turn us up. Okay. So just a second. I have to turn up my volume.
So we didn't capture the Clubhouse at all on this one?
What's that?
We didn't capture the Clubhouse folks on the dialogue or no?
At the very end, we, Chandler, who also is a brighter person than I ended up putting my phone up on my keyboard and playing it through there. And so the very end got caught.
Actually, Mike was doing that too. So.
Yeah, Mike was doing a little bit, but it didn't really come through very well. So
yeah, so next time we'll know better. So
yep.
And Chandler
joining
us today. You're getting to hear the how the sausage is made.
All good. All good. Well, thanks for having me. I hope it was fruitful.
Yeah, it was. It was a really good discussion. It's fun. It's just, with this, since this is our first time, we're still even on Facebook Live. You can end the Facebook Live, I think.
Oh, right. I forgot.
If I knew we were going to be live, I would have shaved and everything else.
Yeah, well, I doubt we had very many people on Facebook Live. So, and I think, I'm not going to bother doing this on YouTube. I think I'm just going to do it as a podcast, because it's just going to be easier with the editing and all that. It's going to be hard to edit the Zoom, the video. So anyway, all right.
It might be worth doing the video up until the point where we start doing the Clubhouse, because there were some really good pull quotes from that. So
okay, we can play around with it.
I'm gonna let you guys go. Talk to you guys later.
Oh yeah, I've got to head out.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we can figure out a way to edit it, but yeah, I'm not good at editing, so we'll have to get somebody to do it. But anyway,
that's what we got interns for.
What's that?
That's what we have interns for.
Exactly. Bye, Chandler. Bye, Glenda. We're gonna end now. Have a great rest of your day.